The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nebraska plains as Mary Elizabeth Hawkins stood at the edge of the Pawnee village, her heart heavy with betrayal. The year was 1847, and everything she had known for the past 12 years was crumbling before her eyes. "You are no longer one of us." Chief Standing Bear's voice carried the weight of finality. His weathered face, once warm with paternal affection, now held only cold determination. "The council has spoken." Mary's adoptive mother, mourning. Dove wept silently, her hands trembling as she held back from reaching for the girl she had raised as her own daughter. The other villagers averted their eyes, some with shame, others with relief. The drought had lasted 3 moons, and the medicine man's vision had been clear. The white girl's presence angered the spirits. "Please, Father," Mary spoke, in perfect Pawnee, the only language she truly remembered. "I've done nothing wrong. This is my home, my family." Silence. The chief's command echoed across the gathering. "You were taken in when your wagon train was attacked. We showed mercy, raised you as Pawnee, but the spirits have spoken through our suffering. The crops fail, the buffalo flee, and our children grow sick. You must go." Mary's mind reeled. She barely remembered her life before the Pawnee, fragments of a burning wagon, screaming, and then Mourning Dove's gentle hands pulling her from beneath the wreckage. She had been 5 years old then. Now at 17, she was more Pawnee than white. She knew every trail, every sacred site, every story told around the winter fires. Her hands bore the calluses of working buffalo hide. Her hair was braided, in the traditional way, adorned with beads Mourning Dove had crafted for her coming-of-age ceremony just 1 moon ago. From the crowd, a figure emerged. Broken Arrow, the tribe's fiercest warrior, stepped forward. His reputation preceded him, scarred from countless battles, known for his ruthlessness against enemies. The scar running from his left eyebrow to his jaw told the story of a Sioux raid he had single-handedly repelled. Yet something flickered in his dark eyes as he looked at Mary. "I will take her," he announced, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. "Deeds to the nearest white settlement. She will not die on the plains because of our fears." The chief frowned deeply. "You would defy the council's wishes." "I defy nothing," Broken Arrow replied steadily. "The council said she must leave. It said nothing of how would you have her blood on our hands. Would that please the spirits more?" Standing Bear's jaw tightened. His nephew had always been headstrong, but never defiant. "And why would you, who has killed more whites than any warrior here, show mercy to this one?" Broken Arrow's expression remained stoic. "Because I remember the child who bandaged my wounds after the Battle of Ash Hollow. Because she is innocent of her birth, just as we are innocent of ours. And because sending her to die alone would make us no better than those who massacre our people." The journey began at dawn. Mary walked behind Broken Arrow's horse, her wrists bound loosely with rawhide strips. The other warriors flanked them, their faces masks of disapproval. They traveled north, following the Platte River's winding path through Nebraska territory. "Keep your eyes down," Broken Arrow instructed without turning. "You show respect, and they might forget their anger." Mary stumbled over rocks hidden beneath prairie grass. Her feet, accustomed to moccasins, struggled in the ill-fitting boots Broken Arrow had given her. They were too large, having belonged to a dead cavalry soldier, but better than nothing against the harsh terrain. By midday, the sun blazed mercilessly. Sweat stung Mary's eyes, mixing with tears she refused to let fall. Behind them, smoke still rose from what had been her home for 15 years. Everything she'd known, everyone who'd raised her despite her pale skin, was gone. "Water," Broken Arrow said, dismounting near a small creek. He untied her hands and handed her a water skin. The other warriors watched suspiciously as she drank. "Why did you save me?" Mary asked quietly in Lakota, the only language she spoke fluently. Broken Arrow studied her for a long moment. "Your mother, White Dove, was my cousin. Before. She died birthing you. She made me promise to protect you if harm came. I have avoided this duty for many years, hoping the tribe would fully accept you. I was wrong." "But I am Lakota," Mary protested. "I know no other way." "Your skin says otherwise. In the world we now live in, that matters more than what is in your heart." They resumed traveling as afternoon shadows lengthened. Mary noticed Broken Arrow favoring his left side, where a cavalry saber had found its mark during the morning raid. Blood seeped through his war shirt, but he said nothing. That night, they camped in a grove of cottonwoods. The warriors built no fire, fearing army patrols. Mary was given pemmican and dried berries, the same rations as the others. It was more kindness than she'd expected. "Tomorrow we reach Fort Laramie," Broken Arrow announced, "and I will leave you close enough to walk there safely." "You mean to abandon me among the whites?" Mary's voice cracked. "I mean to save your life. The army will not pursue a white woman. They will take you to their settlements, where you belong." "I belong with my people." "Your people are dead," one warrior, Spotted Eagle, spat. "You brought the soldiers. They tracked your white blood like wolves follow wounded deer." "That's enough," Broken Arrow commanded. Oh, she knew nothing of the raid, but doubt gnawed at Mary. Had the soldiers somehow used her presence in the village to justify their attack? The thought made her sick. As the others slept, Broken Arrow approached her. "There is something. You must know your father still lives. His name is James McKenna, a trader in Denver City. I tell you this not from kindness, but because you will need somewhere to go." Mary felt her world tilt. "My father. But White Dove said he died. She lied to protect you. He doesn't know you exist. Your mother chose the tribe over him, but never told him about you. Perhaps it is time he learned." The revelation shattered another piece of Mary's identity. Everything she'd believed about herself was crumbling like sand between her fingers. Dawn brought new challenges. Broken Arrow's wound had worsened. Overnight, infection setting in despite Mary's attempts to clean it with creek water and wild herbs. His fever burned hot, and he swayed dangerously in his saddle. "We must find help," Mary urged. But the warriors ignored her. To them, she was cargo to be delivered, nothing more. By noon, Fort Laramie's wooden walls appeared on the horizon. The American flag snapped in the wind above the fortress, a sight that filled Mary with dread rather than relief. Broken Arrow reined in his horse 2 miles from the fort. "This is where we part," he said weakly. Sliding from his mount with difficulty, he pressed a small leather pouch into Mary's hands. "Gold coins, hidden for years. They will help you. Reach Denver City?" "You're dying," Mary said bluntly. "Let me take you to the fort. They have doctors." Broken Arrow laughed bitterly. "A Lakota warrior seeking help from the Bluecoats. They would hang me before sunset." He gestured to Spotted Eagle. "Take my horse. Lead the others home." "You cannot stay here," Spotted Eagle protested. "You will die alone." "Then I die with honor, not in the white man's prison." Broken Arrow settled against a large boulder, his breathing labored. "Go, all of you!" The warriors hesitated, torn between loyalty and survival. Finally, Spotted Eagle nodded sharply. Without another word, they wheeled their horses and galloped away, leaving Mary alone with her dying protector. "You must go too," Broken Arrow whispered. "I won't leave you." Mary tore strips from her dress to bind his wound properly. "My mother would curse me from the spirit world." For 2 days, Mary tended to Broken Arrow in their makeshift shelter. She snared rabbits, found water, and kept him warm through the cold nights. But his strength faded like smoke on the A wind! On the third dawn, he gripped her hand with surprising force. "Promise me something. When you find your father, do not hate him for not knowing you, and do not hate yourself for surviving when others did not." "I promise," Mary whispered, though the words felt hollow. Broken Arrow died as the sun reached its peak. Mary closed his eyes and sang the death song White Dove had taught her, her voice carrying across the empty plains. She had no scaffold to place his body upon, no proper way to honor him. Instead, she covered him with stones and marked the spot with his broken arrow, the symbol he'd carried since youth. The walk to Fort Laramie took 3 hours. Each step carried her further from everything she'd known. The soldiers at the gate stared in shock at the white woman dressed in torn Lakota clothing, speaking broken English with a heavy accent. "Please," she managed. "I need help. Denver City, Father." The commander, Colonel Harrison, was summoned. He studied her with sharp blue eyes, taking in her sun-darkened skin, her long braided hair, the Lakota patterns on her dress. "Oh, dear God," he breathed. "You're one of the captives. How long were you with them?" Mary struggled with the English words. "All life, since baby." The colonel's wife, Margaret Harrison, pushed past the soldiers. "You poor dear. Come, we must get you proper clothing and food." She wrapped an arm around Mary's shoulders, not noticing how the girl flinched at the unfamiliar touch. Over the following days, Mary was subjected to what the Harrisons considered kindness. They burned her Lakota dress, cut her hair to shoulder-length and forced her into corsets and petticoats that felt like prison bars against her skin. They assigned her a tutor, Mrs. Pemberton, to correct her savage ways and teach her proper English. "Your name is Mary McKenna," Mrs. Pemberton insisted during one lesson, "not Singing Bird, or whatever heathen name they gave you. You must forget those ways if you're to rejoin civilized society." But Mary couldn't forget. At night, she dreamed in Lakota. She woke expecting to see the familiar buffalo hide walls of her tipi, only to find herself trapped in a wooden room with a door that locked from the outside. For her protection, they said. The fort's chaplain, Reverend Davis, took special interest in her salvation. He spoke of sin and redemption, of her need to embrace Christianity and abandon her pagan beliefs. Mary nodded along, understanding perhaps half his words, and while internally reciting the prayers to Wakantanka that White Dove had taught her. After 2 weeks of rehabilitation, Colonel Harrison announced they'd found her father. "James McKenna is indeed in Denver City. He's been notified of your situation. He's agreed to take you in." The news should have brought relief. Instead, Mary felt only dread. How could she face a father who didn't know she existed? How could she pretend to be the daughter he might want when she didn't even know how to be white? The stagecoach to Denver City departed 3 days later. Mary sat rigid between a minister's wife who clutched her Bible and a merchant who reeked of tobacco. Every bump in the road reminded her how far she was traveling from everything she'd known. "Such a pretty thing," the minister's wife commented, studying Mary's features. Though you'll need proper instruction in Christian ways, I'm sure." Mary bit her tongue, remembering Broken Arrow's words about choosing battles wisely. The woman meant well, even if her words cut deep. Denver City sprawled before them like a wound on the earth. Buildings of raw, lumber-lined muddy streets, where men staggered between saloons and brothels. The air tasted of smoke and ambition, greed and desperation. James McKenna waited at the stage depot. Mary recognized him instantly. The same green eyes stared back at her from his weathered face. He was tall, well-dressed despite the frontier setting, with graying hair that had once been as dark as hers. "Mary," his voice cracked on her name. "My God, you look just like your mother." "I wouldn't know," Mary replied coldly. "She died when I was 7. Pain flashed across his features. I didn't know about you. If I had..." "You'd have what?" taken me from the only family I knew, made me white before my time? James flinched but didn't retreat. I'd have given you choices. That's all I can offer now. His house stood on the respectable side of town, 2 stories of imported lumber with real glass windows. A Mexican woman named Rosa served as housekeeper, eyeing Mary with curiosity and sympathy. Your room, James said, showing her to a space larger than entire lodges she'd known. The bed stood high off the ground, covered in fabrics too fine to touch. Rosa will help you with appropriate clothing. Mary fingered the doeskin dress she wore, the last connection to her life. And if I choose to keep wearing this, then you'll face the consequences of that choice. Denver isn't kind to those who stand out. She learned the truth of his words quickly. The dress came off, replaced by corsets that stole her breath and skirts that tangled her legs. Rosa taught her to pin her hair, to sit with her back. Straighty, to eat with silver tools that seemed designed for torture rather than nourishment. But the external changes were nothing compared to the internal battle. Every night, Mary dreamed in Lakota. Every morning, she woke to English expectations. Her father tried, bringing tutors for reading and arithmetic, introducing her to respectable families, but the divide between them seemed unbridgeable. 3 months passed before she saw Broken Arrow again. He appeared at the kitchen door one evening, thinner than before but healed. Rosa shrieked, but Mary silenced her with a look. "You came," she whispered in Lakota. "I promised I would see your journey through." His eyes took in her transformed appearance with sadness. "You look like them now. Only on the outside." Mary's hands shook as she poured him coffee. "I don't belong here any more than I belonged there." Belonging isn't about blood or appearance. It's about choosing where to plant your spirit. And where is your spirit planted? With my people, always. But, he paused, studying her face. "I've been thinking about your words, about finding new ways to fight for our survival." James appeared in the doorway, his hand moving instinctively toward the pistol at his hip. "Mary, who is this?" "The man who saved my life when your people would have let me die." She stood between them, suddenly understanding her role. "Father, this is Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow, my father, James McKenna." The 2 men measured each other across centuries of conflict. Then, surprising everyone, James extended his hand. "I owe you my daughter's life." Broken Arrow hesitated, then accepted the gesture. "And she saved her own life. I merely showed her the path." That night changed everything. James began asking questions about the Lakota, about the treaties being broken, about the violence escalating on both sides. Broken Arrow spoke of his people's desperation, their need for advocates who understood both worlds. Mary found herself translating more than words. She translated hearts, intentions, possibilities. Her father had connections in territorial government. Broken Arrow had influence among the younger warriors. Together, they began crafting something unprecedented, a dialogue based on mutual respect rather than conquest. It wasn't easy. Mary faced hatred from both sides. Whites who saw her as tainted by her Indian upbringing, Lakota who viewed her as a traitor to her mother's people. But she persevered, finding strength in her unique position. A year later, she stood before the Territorial Assembly, dressed in a way that honored both her heritages, a proper American dress adorned with Lakota beadwork her aunt had sent. She spoke of understanding, of the possibility for coexistence, of choosing progress over prejudice. Not everyone listened, but some did. And in the frontier town of Denver City, where cultures collided daily, sometimes a few open minds were enough to start change. Broken Arrow returned to his people with promises of fair negotiations. James used his influence to ensure those promises were kept. And Mary, she found her place at last, not fully white or Indian, but something new, a bridge between worlds, a translator of hearts, a woman who refused to let others define her worth. The West was changing, violently and inevitably, but in one corner of Colorado Territory, a different story was being written, one where a girl abandoned by her tribe didn't disappear into history, but helped write it instead. Standing on her father's porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, Mary remembered her mother's words. "You will walk in two worlds, little one." She'd thought it was a curse. Now she understood it was her greatest gift. The last warrior hadn't just taken her to freedom. He'd shown her that freedom meant choosing who to become, regardless of what others expected, and Mary Windwalker McKenna had finally made her choice.